Keeping a large balance in your checking account might feel safe, but it can actually cost you money in the long run. Many people believe that the more cash sitting in your checking account, the better. The reality check is excess idle cash loses value over time and could be working harder for you elsewhere. In this video, I'll break down why holding too much in your checking account is a huge mistake and what to do instead to make your money work for you. Money in checking accounts actually loses value over time because the interest rate on checking accounts is extremely low while prices keep rising. In the United States, the average checking account interest rate is only about 0.07 APY, essentially nothing. Meanwhile, inflation typically runs 2 to 3% or higher most years. This means your money's purchasing power is eroding. For example, $500 saved in 2000 could buy approximately 400 cups of coffee then, but today it buys only about 111 cups. The rest of its value vanished due to inflation. Keeping too much cash stagnant in checking is like going backward financially. Your balance might look the same, but it buys less and less each year because most checking and regular saving accounts pay almost no interest. Big banks often offer as little as 0.01% interest on basic accounts. That's nowhere near enough to keep up with inflation. $10,000 in a low-interest account might earn just a few bucks a year, while prices of goods are rising much faster. By not earning a return, excess cash in checking is losing real value, a silent money leak in your finances. Every dollar sitting idly in your checking is a missed opportunity. It could be earning money elsewhere with minimal effort. For instance, many high-yield savings accounts or money market accounts today pay significantly higher interest, often around 2 to 5% APY, depending on the country and current rates. Some special high-yield accounts even go up around 5% if certain conditions are met. Compare that to the near 0% in a standard checking. It's a big difference. If you kept that same $10,000 in a 4% interest account, you'd earn about $400 in a year. Over time, those interest earnings compound, boosting your wealth without any extra work. Beyond bank interest, there's also the potential for investment growth. Money not needed for immediate expenses could be invested in index funds, stocks, or retirement accounts to potentially earn higher returns over the long haul. Historically, broad stock market indexes have returned around 7% annually on average, with ups and downs. While investments carry some risk and aren't as liquid as a checking account, leaving all your surplus cash in checking guarantees a 0% return, which, after inflation, is actually a negative return. Essentially, by holding too much in checking, you're sacrificing the chance to grow that money through interest or investment gains. If you're getting value so far, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. We keep sharing finance and wealth building strategies like this, and we don't want you to miss out. Keeping an overly large balance in checking isn't just a wasted opportunity. It can also lead to overspending. When you see a fat balance in your everyday account, you might feel more flush than you really are. Psychologically, it's easier to justify extra purchases because the money is just sitting there waiting. Without a spending plan, a hefty checking balance can quickly disappear on unplanned expenses. In other words, with a fat checking account and no spending plan, you could easily spend more than you intend. The more you have in one big pot for day-to-day use, the harder it is to track where it all goes. By contrast, segregating your money by purpose can instill discipline. For example, if you move surplus cash into a separate savings or investment account, your checking account shows a more realistic picture of what's truly available for current spending. This makes it easier to stick to a budget or spending plan because you're not inadvertently dipping into money that should be earmarked for other goals. Too much money in checking can create a false sense of security and lead to lifestyle creep, higher spending just because the funds are there. If you have a lot of money languishing in checking, it might indicate you're not allocating funds to important financial goals. One red flag: not having a separate emergency fund. Experts generally recommend keeping around 3 to 6 months of expenses in emergency savings, often in a high-yield savings account for accessibility. If all your savings are just piled into checking, you might think you have an emergency fund, but in practice, that money isn't distinguished and likely not earning much. Worse, you might be tempted to use it for non-emergencies. A huge checking balance with no dedicated emergency account is a sign of poor planning. You're not optimizing your safety net. Another potential issue: neglecting retirement or investments. Having more cash than you need in checking often goes hand in hand with low or no retirement savings. Think about it. If you have, say, $20,000 just sitting in checking earning nothing, but haven't maxed out contributions to your 401k, IRA, or other retirement accounts, you're doing yourself a disservice. That money could be growing tax-advantaged for your future. Similarly, you might carry high-interest debt, like credit cards, while excess cash sits idle. It would be wiser to use some of that cash to pay down debt, saving on interest payments. In summary, too much in checking can mean you're not prioritizing your financial goals. Whether that's building an emergency fund, investing for retirement, or paying off debt, it's all about putting each dollar to its best use. Believe it or not, keeping extremely large sums in one checking account can even put your money at risk in rare scenarios. Most countries have deposit insurance limits that protect your bank deposits up to a certain amount. For example, in the US, the FDIC insures deposits up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. In the UK, the FSCS covers up to £85,000 per person per bank, and in Australia, about $250,000 per person per bank under the government guarantee. If you're fortunate enough to have more than these amounts in one account, any balance above the insured limit is not guaranteed if the bank were to fail. Now, bank failures are uncommon, but they do happen, and anything above the insured cap could be lost or hard to recover. Additionally, having all your money in one place could make you more vulnerable to fraud or errors. While banks will often reimburse fraud eventually, a fraudster draining a checking account with a huge balance could freeze a large chunk of your funds and create short-term hardship. It's simply not wise to put all your eggs in one basket. If you have a very large cash sum, spread it across accounts or banks if needed to stay within insured limits and diversify access. For most people, this isn't a concern until you approach those high balances, but it's good to keep in mind. So, what's the ideal approach? How much should you keep in checking? Financial planners often suggest keeping about 1 to 2 months worth of living expenses in your checking account, your walking around money for bills and day-to-day needs, plus a small buffer, approximately 30% for a cushion. This ensures you have enough for regular payments and a little extra so you're not in danger of overdrafting. For anything beyond that amount, don't let it just sit in checking, put it to work. For example, build a proper emergency fund. After those 1 to 2 months of expenses in checking, aim to stash 3 to 6 months of expenses in a separate high-yield savings account for emergencies. This keeps it accessible but earning interest and mentally separates it from your spending money. You get the best of both worlds: liquidity if something goes wrong, but not the temptation to spend it on a whim. Use high-yield accounts for surplus cash. If you have additional cash you won't need in the immediate term, move it to higher yield options. For short-term savings goals or extra reserves, a high-interest savings account or money market account can earn you significantly more interest while still keeping funds relatively safe and accessible. For example, an online savings account might pay 20 to 50 times the interest of a typical checking account, helping counter inflation. Invest for long-term goals. For money that you don't need for at least a few years, consider investing it to achieve growth. Contribute to retirement accounts, like a 401k in the US or similar in the UK, Australia, and take advantage of any employer match or tax benefits. You can also invest in low-cost index funds, stocks, or bonds through a brokerage for goals like buying a house or simply building wealth. These investments historically yield much more over time than cash in the bank, though be mindful of risks and your time horizon. The key is that once your short-term needs are covered, excess cash should be out working for you. Pay down high-interest debt. One of the best investments can be debt repayment. If you carry credit card debt, personal loans, or other high-interest debt, use some of that idle cash to knock those balances down. For instance, if your credit card charges 18% interest, paying it off is like getting an 18% guaranteed return, far better than 0% in checking. Reducing debt will improve your financial health and free up future cash flow. Adopt a spending plan. Structure your accounts as part of a simple budget or spending plan. Know how much you need in checking for bills, how much goes to savings and investments, etc. This way, you won't accidentally accumulate too much in checking. Automate transfers, for example. Schedule a monthly transfer of surplus from checking to savings or brokerage. This prevents money from just piling up aimlessly. By being intentional, you'll keep your checking balance optimal and keep the rest of your money growing toward your goals. Keeping a huge balance in your checking account is a drag on your money. It earns almost nothing, loses to inflation, and invites overspending. Use your checking account only for day-to-day expenses. That's about 1 to 3 months of expenses plus a little addition if needed. Move the rest to purpose-built accounts like a high-yield savings account or an investments account.